Picture this, you pick up a girl in your limited run F8 M3CS with individual color, carbon ceramic brakes, bucket seats, every surface covered with leather, alcantara or carbon fiber, and she says, my dad has the same car. Then shows you some pictures of this shit. A poverty spec is usually the entry-level trim of a car with no optional extras. It's either bought by someone who just wants to get from point A to point B and is trying to save as much money as possible, or by someone who wants to buy a premium brand they can't really afford, but are ready to sell their soul just to own it.
How long are you guys financing for?
For 287 months.
These are the same people that post an Instagram story of their 116D steering wheel with an M-Power GIF and some Russian music in the background. Although every car is technically a poverty spec, some are not that bad as they don't look much different from the top spec model. Take the Toyota Camry for example. The Elite trim, which is the base model, doesn't look much worse than the range-topping XSE, other than bigger wheels, a slightly different bumper, and the interior is pretty identical as most features are standard. The worst poverty specs come from luxury brands that try to lure buyers in with low starting prices. And by the time you expect all the options that make the car feel truly premium, the price has doubled. In Germany, a base 320i starts at around 45,000 euros, and with all the options, it can almost reach 80,000. Which makes a huge difference visually and feature-wise between the two trims, even though they are the exact same model. But only in recent years has the automotive industry produced some horrendous poverty specs. As in the past, cars didn't have many options as manufacturing was more difficult and there wasn't much tech to offer. The more recent times have produced some truly disgusting poverty specs, as new cars are coming out with a lot new features while only offering just a few of them as standard. But let's start small. As cars are becoming screens on wheels, the major options are becoming software related. A perfect example of this is the Tesla Model 3. The base and top spec model look identical inside and out. The only difference is that the top spec has some extra pixels on the screen, mainly for the self-driving features. If a base Model 3 owner is watching this video, you're telling me you're gay enough to buy a Tesla, and you're even more gay by not being able to afford some damn pixels. What does that make you? Gay squared? Although I love to trash Tesla people as much as you're watching this video, we have to move on. And what's worse than not having all the pixels? Not having all the buttons. Having a lot of blank buttons is a pretty clear sign of a poverty spec. Let's take a look at the previous generation S-Class, which has one of the best poverty specs in my opinion. One of the easiest ways to tell if it's a poverty spec is to take a look at the strip of buttons above the light switch. If you see only one button, you know for sure the owner is probably an accountant who makes only smart financial decisions, buys the S-Class for the comfort, and understands that all those features are just gimmicks. Also, we can refer to him as a fucking nerd. On the other hand, the guy that specs all of them is a G. He also knows he's never going to use them, but in his mind, it feels wrong to ball out in an S-Class with missing buttons. Showing his friends what this S-Class can do isn't enough justification to be spending 50% more than base price.
Buttons.
These Mercedes blank buttons are nothing compared to some Porsches. Porsche gets a lot of good press for sticking to buttons for controlling the car's functionalities, unlike other manufacturers that have moved everything inside of a screen. This is great, right? Well, it is, if you have a fully spec'd model. If you don't, you'll have some blank buttons right in front of your eyes, reminding you of what a loser you are for not ticking all the options. If you think that Porsche is just a greedy corporation trying to squeeze as much money as possible from its customers, you'd be mistaken. They leave all these blank buttons so their customers get creative and let their imagination decide what each blank button does. You want to throw banana peels so the car behind sleeps? Sure, you drive a Porsche. Your passenger is being annoying and you don't want to deal with it? Sure man, drive a Porsche after all. Haven't gotten any play recently? Even here Porsche got you covered. God fucking bless German engineering, man. Speaking of German engineering, let's go back in time to Porsche's next door competitor, Mercedes. It's 2016 and Mercedes designers are presenting in front of the higher-up executives the new E-Class design. They explain how the entire interior design is made around the dual bank of screens to give the E-Class a really modern look. Miles ahead of its competition from Audi and BMW, completely redefining the meaning of luxury in the segment. Everyone in the room applauded them, and as they're about to wrap up the meeting, an accountant whose ethnicity we're not going to mention goes, "How about we make the screens optional?" "Great fucking idea," shouted the shareholders. The accountant got a raise and 1 month on free vacation, while the designers were forced to make a Down syndrome version of their gorgeous design. With this E-Class, you could have a true spaceship inside and out, with insane tech and very luxurious. Or this monstrosity, with halogen lights, cloth seats, and this shit, with a gauge cluster feeling like it was stuck on with no design integration at all, and an infotainment screen having the bezels bigger than the actual display. Small screens are the most recent and easiest way to tell a poverty spec. There are endless cars with an optional bigger screen, but most are not that bad, as the difference between the two screens is an inch or two, like in the Mazda 3 or most Japanese cars. Or like in some cars that have their screen well integrated into their dashboard, and the screen size doesn't make that big of a difference. The F105 series would be a great example of this. Sure, the big screen fits the interior better, after all, it was designed with that in mind. But even the small screen doesn't look that bad. Its extra plastic, in my opinion, doesn't look like bezels, but rather as part of the dashboard. In Germany, even the M5 didn't have the bigger screen as standard, so it's safe to say that BMW thinks the same. Well, most likely the accountants. But then you have cars where the small screen just looks straight up depressing, like they designed the whole interior around the big screen and then just slapped on a tiny outdated one for the base models. The worst offenders are the ones with massive plastic bezels that make the screen look even smaller than it actually is. You sit inside and it feels like you are staring at a giant plastic frame with a tiny display shoved inside, completely ruining the whole vibe of the interior. The latest A-Class is a perfect example of this, which, like its bigger brother, the E-Class, has a pretty modern interior, dominated by the dual screens, ambient lighting, and all the tech you'd expect from a luxury brand. But of course, that's only if you're willing to pay for it, as the base model in a lot of markets comes with these tiny screens that have bezels bigger than the actual display, comparable to TVs from the 90s. It's honestly shocking that a car with such a futuristic design can look so outdated just because of a screen downgrade. The worst part? It somehow makes the A-Class feel even cheaper than a lot of its less expensive competitors. A well-spec Kia or even a new gen Peugeot looks more premium, just because their screens don't look like they come out of an old taxi. To wrap up this video, let's take a look at what I genuinely believe is the worst poverty spec car of all time, the BMW E93 series. Starting with the exterior, the base model came with those dreadful halogen headlights, a bland non-sporty body kit, and tiny 16-inch wheels that made the side profile look like the average American. But if you spend a bit more, you could get adaptive xenon headlights with angel eyes, a pretty sporty body kit, and 18-inch wheels, which combined made the E90 look like a 3 Series should. Jumping into the interior, where the most significant differences lie, it's clear from the first sight that the base E90 feels like an entirely different car compared to the fully spec model. Most German luxury cars offer a normal and a sporty steering wheel, which both are of same quality and functionality. But BMW said, let's do worse. You have the option of a sporty steering wheel, a less sporty one which looks like shit in my opinion, and to make matters worse, it offered the same steering wheel with no buttons and fully plastic, like some cheap economy car. And speaking of economy cars, the standard climate control was manual AC, which is very fitting of a German luxury car. But as always, you could spend a bit more for the proper dual-zone automatic climate control. The infotainment options were a bit weird as well. Like in most cars, the E90 offered a big and a small screen. The standard models offered no screen at all and had a completely different dashboard layout from the higher spec ones. So yeah, shout out to BMW for consistently making disgusting poverty specs.